Hi, I'm Michelle Carney, and this is my episode of Sleep, Eat, Perform, Repeat.
Coming up on Sleep, Eat, Perform, Repeat.
I think the more we see, the more we hear, the more we understand, the easier it is to be inclusive and just see people as people and humans. And then that sense of belonging within businesses or community. We all want to belong somewhere, don't we? My utopia, if you like, would to get to. So when a mother gives birth to a child who happens to have Down syndrome, it is, congratulations, you've got a beautiful daughter. And the mother and the parents and the family have seen images of people with Down syndrome who are winning gold medals, who are doing really well in business. So that there isn't a barrier there, that anything is possible.
Yes, great to have you back on board today. We have an excellent guest coming up for you. Someone who's inspiring and empowering people to make the world a better place. We have Michelle Carney live on the show with us today. But just before we dive in, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to the Sleep, Eat, Perform, Repeat newsletter. You can do it online on our website, sleepeatperformrepeat.com. It lands in your inbox every week, free of charge, and has some unique insights into elite sports, arts, business cultures through the in-depth conversations that we have on the show. We also share some partner offers that are exclusively available to listeners of the show. And lastly, a quick shout out to the sponsor of the show, Haora. You can check it out at haoralife.com. That's HAUORA life.com. Now, let's dive in with Michelle.
Welcome to Stories, Lessons and Learnings.
Today we spoke with Michelle Carney, founder and CEO of Purpose Driven Impact, Comic Relief Program Director and former CEO of Special Olympics GB. Michelle is a giver who has transformed and reformed many environments. Having an MSc in Leadership and Organisational Change, Michelle has been leading, inspiring and empowering people to change the world. She's passionate about seeing the opportunity, potential and wonder in any moment. She has experience across charity, volunteer, international NGO, commercial, sport for development and professional sports sectors. She is vocal about diversity and inclusion, and her hashtag is Be Kind. Today we speak about her role with Comic Relief, Sport Relief and the Commonwealth Games, how she got into that and what her after-party thing would be. We unpack how she changes the lives of others every day and why the smallest and simplest things, like a smile or compliment, can make a huge impact. We lean into diversity in sport and how to genuinely transform the corporate and sports world from an inclusion perspective. Her stories around the Special Olympics role are amazing. We get an insight into where this all began for Michelle, what's exciting coming up, and what high performance means to someone who has impacted so many. Michelle Carney, thanks very much for spending some time with us today all the way over in London. What's your day looking like? How are you doing?
My day is looking really great. So yeah, thank you, David and Kieran, for the invitation. I'm currently sat in Comic Relief offices by the River Thames, just looking out. Really looking forward to the conversation with you two guys. Don't know where it's going to go, but that's the beauty of conversations.
What are you doing at Comic Relief?
So I set up my own consultancy. So I was previously CEO of Special Olympics Great Britain for 3 years. And then last summer, the universe kind of changed a little bit and it just kind of moved its way around. So circumstances meant that I then set up my own business called Purpose Driven Impact. I'm a purpose-driven individual and just kind of want to help organisations be as inclusive and diverse and creative as possible. My background is sport, something I'm passionate about, the power of sport for good. And Comic Relief reached out to me and said they were re-looking at sport relief in terms of how that campaign runs and looking at doing it a bit differently. And we're looking at a partnership with Commonwealth Games and asked me if I'd come in and help and support and basically lead that partnership, which is right up my street. So it's one of the contracts that I have at the moment.
That's excellent. I seen actually your tweet recently about the funds that Comic Relief has raised over the last 20 years. I think it's £419 million has been raised by the British public. How much of that is driven through the people who are in Comic Relief and Sport Relief that are working tirelessly to get these events, to get these things across to the general public?
Well, I think it's down to the general public. It's down to people's desire to do good and to give back. And what Comic Relief do brilliantly is through Red Nose Day, which is happening on the 18th of March. So the whole team here is in Red Nose Day, night of TV, because there's a big broadcast show on BBC a week on Friday. So actually what Comic Relief do brilliantly is take entertainment and comedy and combine it with a call to action to give, to do good, do something funny for money. And that's also using the power of sport and sports stars and, celebrities to entertain people, because we all need a laugh, don't we? We all need to be entertained. And charity giving, we see so many desperate images, and I've always been really uncomfortable with some of the big charities, who, less so now, but use, images of the same hungry child eating from the same, aluminium, the foil packets. And I'm like, actually, what you're showing is the problem still exists and the funding isn't moving forward. So my preference, and it's just my personal, is that showing people the difference in a joyful way of the impact that funding has is far more, it's just a better way to bring people in, because everybody has, all the stressful lives and tough lives, and we see the news and all of that. We just want a bit of light relief. And if we can give on the back of that, then more power to your elbow, as they say. So yeah, there's a team of really committed people who work across Comic Relief, but also the BBC has a really strong partnership there. And the BBC in the last 100 years, I was chatting to another team, they've raised, their viewers have raised over, I think it's £3 billion for charities.
Wow.
That's the power of entertainment and TV. And I think the challenge now, and what a lot of charities and certainly Comic Relief and using the Sport Relief, the stuff we're doing with Sport Relief is we're going to test some new ways. People are consuming content in a really different way. There aren't just 4 channels anymore. Although my parents live in the west of Ireland, in rural Ireland, don't have Sky or any digital TV, so they still have 4 channels. We want to be entertained. We want to be entertained on our phones. We want short form content. We're unlikely to tune in and sit in front of TV for 4 hours. So how do we utilise how people are consuming data in the best way possible, but also informs with a call, to give. And that's the beauty of technology and the digital evolution as well.
I'd say so. Michelle, so with this big day coming up, what would be the after party, after event piece of entertainment you would do trying to raise money, trying to raise some funds? What would that be?
Well, David, I am always entertaining. It's not really. I like to think I am. I think I'm the funniest person in a room of one. I tend to make myself laugh consistently. Honestly, there's a whole documentary to be made inside my head, because there's a lot that goes on in there. I'm going to wait to the after party with the Commonwealth Games, because I think that'll be a much bigger party, because we're in the planning for all the activations and the activities that we're going to be doing leading up to the Commonwealth Games, which takes place in Birmingham in the summer. So it starts on the 28th of July, will run to, I think it's the 9th of August. And with Comic Relief, we've partnered, we're one of the registered official charities of the Commonwealth Games. So we're working with 2 other small charities, Commonwealth Sport Foundation and United by Birmingham, which is their legacy charity, to look at how we use the power of a massive games and a big sporting event to mobilise and encourage and entertain, but also compel people to do good and, donate whatever they can, or just my philosophy in life, just be kind, just be a good person. And if you can, help another person on the way, then do that as well. So I think by the end of the Commonwealth Games, one of the teams set me a challenge of she was looking forward to seeing me dancing on a table with Lenny Henry, newsworthy.
That's brilliant. And we can see across your history, I mean, even before Purpose Driven Impact, being with the Special Olympics, being the former CEO, there's a lot of focus on giving back, creating a better place for people to live in this world. Where was this passion ignited, and when did it really start to become that purpose for you?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I think I've always been driven to help or do good. And now I don't know where that came from as a youngster, but I only realised as I've gone through different roles, and if you look at my career history, it's a non-traditional route through. I've had some peaks and troughs, and I've gone from being a CEO then to losing everything and going back and working behind a bar and working my way back up again, and then falling off and then working my way back up again. And through a few roles that were, high profile, one big cricket club that I worked with, I was like, actually, this doesn't light my fire. Doing a job that doesn't make a difference to people's lives just doesn't do anything for me. And, it's people have different motivations, don't they? But for me, I just saw the opportunities that I didn't have as a young person. I grew up of Irish parents in Manchester. We didn't have a lot of money. I went to school in Hume Moss Side. What we did have was a great community around us. I'd never seen anybody working in a corporate sector. I didn't know what that was, and I didn't have any role models that showed me the way. I kind of bumbled along and found my way through. And, I was desperate to play football and sport, and nobody could tell me where to go. I ended up, as I grew up next to Man United football ground, a complete red nut. And when Sir Alex Ferguson took over, I wrote him a letter and said, can you tell me where I can play football? And fair dues to him. And I told him last year when I met him, I said, he wrote back to me, gave me a number, and I started to play for Man United ladies. So, yeah, I didn't want anybody else to struggle as much as I did, just for the right opportunities based on where you live, who your parents are, what opportunities are presented to you. And I think we're all capable of amazing things. And for me, I genuinely get no greater joy than, lighting a spark or, working with, I love working with young people to go, actually, you can do this, and just giving that helping hand and just pointing in a different direction. And, I scrapped my way through, but I don't think it should be that hard. And yeah, I think that's my drive is, the opportunities that I didn't have as a young person. I kind of want to pave the way to make it easier. So, the most brilliant people, I used to use this analogy in sport, the best cricket player in the world might well live in Stretford in Manchester, where I grew up. But if they've never had the opportunity to play cricket, how do they know? If you don't give people an opportunity. And then that cricket player, if they are playing in a club, but the club is not part of a pathway, so the club, they're the best player in the club, but actually they could play at international level. If there isn't a pathway or somebody helping them on the way, you'll just never unlock that potential. And I just think we've all got the potential to do amazing things, and just with a bit of belief and just pointing in the right direction. I call them angels, Every so often we meet people in life who just point us in a different direction. You go, oh, okay, yeah, I'll do that.
What's bubbling through here is so much kind of intrinsic motivation, Michelle, right? It's stuff that lights your fire. And there was a lovely piece there on LinkedIn you wrote, kind of capturing around International Women's Day, and you were talking about opportunity is everything. And then you kind of finished the paragraph with making sure wonderful things happen. So how do you make sure, or how do you try that in every day? You really are trying to create that joy, that spark, that wonder, that positivity, that energy, because it radiates through you. But how can you keep on giving that message to others each day? What does the day to day look like for you?
Do you know what? I did it this morning. I'm on my way in on the tube, which is a soulless place. It can be. But, we're everybody is having we've all got our own challenges and stresses, and, you never know what anybody else is going through. So I smile at people. If I like somebody's outfit, I'll tell them whether I know them or not. If I like somebody's shoes, I'll say that. I was in a shop giving a parcel over the other week, and I went in and this guy was behind the counter, and he was just looking soulless. So I gave him a big smile, and he looked at me really confused. And so I was like, "Oh, hey, how's your day?" Da, 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 da. And they did what he needed to do, and I said thank you and a big smile, and his face just then changed, and he was like, "Oh," and I was like, "Okay," just giving him just a smattering of something, because we know how good it feels when somebody says, "Do you know what? You've done a really good job," or "Actually, your hair is lovely," which is what I said to you, David, wasn't it, when I saw you? I just said your background was lovely on the Zoom call we were on. But I just think it's just the small things. It's the Maya Angelou quote. People forget what you say, people forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. So I do a lot of introspection on that, and just kind of want to leave people better than I found them. And that's not me being evangelical, because I don't know if I can swear, pee people off as well. Probably get right up people's noses as well. But it's just a nicer way to live, isn't it? Pay it forward, an old mentor of mine. So I think let's just find something positive in every single day and every situation. Like, I've had quite a lot of things happen in my life which have actually genuinely nearly killed me, or, I've nearly made decisions, about whether I live or die. And it's a really the brain is a really powerful thing. So you just kind of have to hang on to what is good. And I turn everything into, when this mad stuff has happened to me when I lived in Africa, and, my life reads like a movie on occasion. And I just turn it into a chapter of a book. I go, "Oh, this is going to be a great chapter." When really awful things happen, you just kind of go, "Okay, if I'm watching a movie, what does that look like? This is a great chapter for the book." And that's how I kind of see life.
That's brilliant. Thanks for sharing that as well. It's something that we sort of ask a lot on the show about the pandemic and what's gone on recently, about uncertainty and people facing into difficulty or change or challenge in their life. A lot of the time we do a lot of introspection. We say we have to build a self-awareness. How much is maybe the first stepping stone? The advice should be that we should help someone else out, or maybe we should look to give back something or our time to get that little bit of fulfillment and maybe give joy to someone else, so we can maybe get a bit of joy in our own lives from that. Do you think that's a message worth sharing? And it seems to have a fire within yourself with be kind and those other pieces that you mentioned.
100%, because we do things for others because it makes us feel good. It also makes the other person feel good, so it's a win-win. But we don't. There's an intention behind every single thing that we do, every decision we make, every thought that we have. So there's always a payback, and and I'm very honest about charity donations as well. I'm like, I will wait on a night of TV for an opportunity to enter a competition. So if there's a chance I'm going to get something back for my 10, 20, 30 pound donation, I'm going to wait till that point, because that makes me feel, oh, I've got enough, a chance to get something back. But I think that self-awareness, that joy, and actually you're absolutely right that doing stuff for others and then appreciating it makes you feel so good. And I don't know whether people are ashamed to say that, because they think it needs to be entirely selfless. And yes, of course I do good, but we all do take actions to feel something. Whether I always talk about when people are not so nice, what is the intention behind their behaviour? Why would somebody want to speak to me like that? And actually, when you boil it down to it, it's their own insecurity, lack of confidence, and they want to feel powerful or in control, or whatever that is. And I would just rather concentrate on the joy, give joy. So it's the basic principles of the universe, isn't it? It's like the secret. Just see the world differently. And I sound like I'm preaching a bit. I feel like I'm a little bit like Mother Teresa right now, and let me tell you, I'm so far from that amazing woman. But it's just a really small philosophy. And don't get me wrong, I don't get up every day and start singing, "The Hills Are Alive" or anything like that. But yeah, I just think it's a joy to wake up alive. So what are we going to do today just to make it a good day?
You looked at leadership and organizational change in Teesside, and we're as physios here, we're obviously interested in behavior, which you mentioned, and how we can help people understand why it's worth doing something for themselves, why it's good for them. With companies, in the corporate world, or maybe even sporting organizations that are reluctant, slow, maybe not feeling that it is important, enacting change in terms of inclusion and in terms of diversity, what would the message be to those organizations and institutions to get them to really understand that this is something we need to be doing more of?
Oh my God! Well, you only need to read some case studies of the businesses who didn't adapt and change to surroundings. The blockbusters and of this world that just thought they had a really good model that would never go out of date. And actually, I think I was talking to somebody about this the other day. The world that we thought we lived in. So I live and work in London. I'm not a native. But the businesses, the sandwich shops, and all the businesses that were in and around the tube stations that were always packed out. I think they thought, none of us ever thought a pandemic would hit and would just decimate the underground, the tube, the transport system, therefore all the shops, the hospitality. So I think businesses and all of us need to wake up and go, actually, nothing is certain, and we need to consistently observe what's around us, and we need to adapt and changes. I've led so many different organisational transformation and change programs, or reformation as we start to call it now. And people are so fearful of it, but when you break it down to it, it's actually because they just go, what does it mean for me? But actually change is inevitable. Maybe we should teach it in schools, just the importance of it. There's a brilliant book, Who Moved My Cheese? I think Spencer Holmes, I want to say, wrote it, about two mice. Every day went to the same place for dinner, their cheese, and then one day it wasn't there. And it talks about the behaviour of the two mice. And then one just kept going back every day, hopeful. The other one went back a few times and then went, actually, I'm going to have to find food elsewhere. And it's just a really simple analogy about how we survive. But I think the inclusion and diversity is a really interesting one because, and I talk about this a lot, it's very overwhelming to think about it in its entirety. And you can see businesses going, oh God, I'm going to have to employ people. I'm going to have to employ a department. We're going to, we've got other things to do. We need to look at profit margins. Well, my view is let's just take the bullshit out of it. And if everybody just did three things differently, for example, to start to create an inclusive culture, then things would naturally start to change. Everything starts with one step, two steps. If you look at it as, oh my God, we've got to change the whole workforce and it needs to be more diverse and we need to say we're being inclusive, and that's actually not inclusion in action. That's not that at all. But just asking the key questions. So the work I did at Special Olympics, I worked a lot with an athlete leadership team, all athletes with intellectual disabilities, and Special Olympics is a phenomenal organisation that works all over the world and uses sport as a tool to transform lives of people with intellectual disability who are amongst the most disadvantaged groups. So 94% of people with an intellectual disability are unemployed in the UK. Outrageous that only 6% of people with an intellectual disability are in employment. So we have this athlete leadership team made up of athletes, chaired by athletes. I used to ask their permission, could I come to their meetings? When I first started with Special Olympics, I said, what do you want? And they basically said, we want a voice and we want to be heard. So I said, done deal. So they, over the years, then they became part of our formal leadership team, and they were part and parcel of all the big decisions we made, including those of the pandemic when we had to stop activity and how we communicated to athletes and volunteers all across the UK. What they also did was I was working with a team from Downing Street who were working on the government's disability strategy. And I was talking to them about, they came to me and asked me, just in terms of consultation. And I said, hang on a sec, why don't you come to one of our meetings and meet our athlete leadership team and they'll tell you directly what the barriers have been for them. throughout their lives. And that's a much better conversation to have. And that's what happened. Four members, four of the team from Downing Street joined our Zoom meeting, and still see someone today said it was by far away one of the most inspirational sessions. But what they heard was the barriers in education. So someone with an intellectual disability, putting exams in doesn't work, you know. So immediate barrier there. And then BTECs were now, and I did a BTEC at college because I couldn't do exams either. But they were now starting to put exams into BTECs. Well, automatically you're disadvantaging those, if that's even a word, with a learning or intellectual disability. Then if you look at the world of work, how do we apply for jobs? It's all paper-based. You have to go through all these really in-depth forms. Well, automatically you are again excluding people who have a learning disability or an intellectual disability. So when we were doing the recruitment process, and the solutions are really simple. It's just asking the right questions of the right people. So what we did was we had an opening on our board of trustees. So we offered it to the athlete leadership team. So the process is really simple. So I spoke to all 7 of the group and said, this is the opportunity. This is what it would mean. This is what you'll be dealing with, and this is the support you'll have. If you want to apply for it, and we can help you with it, put a 1-minute video together, because they all have phones, and just say why you would like to apply. 5 of them did that. They were assessed by the board. 3 of them were invited to interview, which again, so none of it was paper-based. It was all face-to-face, if you like. And that's how we did the recruitment. It's not that difficult, but if you're just doing heavily paper-based stuff, you are automatically excluding a large percentage of the population. And the same with big businesses. So if you think, and what one of our athletes, Kira, had said, like, businesses, if you go into a meeting in a big, massive corporate space, it's very overwhelming. So for someone with an intellectual or learning disability, they don't necessarily know where to go to check in. And they don't know how to navigate through that building. So if your visitors are sent a video which says, this is what the space is going to look like, this is where you go to, this is reception. When you're there, someone's going to ask you your name and blah, blah, blah. And this is where you're going to go, and there's going to be a lift, and you're going to go up. Someone with autism or who's neurodiverse or, who struggles with, in terms of managing all that information in a space, that makes it entirely more inclusive environment. So it's just small things like that can make a massive difference. And then the big bugbear is, and this is going to be the barrier to true diversity of thought and inclusion on board, the decision makers, and that's those who are around board tables and stuff, they have to buy into it. And in order to change, and I've worked in a lot of places which have been male, middle class, middle-aged men from a certain demographic. Now, if you look at that, so just take cricket, for example, which was that. If you've got a board of 10 men from the same social demographic who have been to the same schools, in order for them to truly be more diverse, some of them are going to have to give up their seat on that board. And then when you ask people to do that, you're taking away their power, if you like, perceived power. So there are some fundamental big things that need to happen in terms, and that's about giving power to other people. And that's where I think this whole agenda can be won or lost. That's around somebody has to give up their seat to allow true diversity of thought. Have I lost you there?
No, that's excellent. And I think just looking into DE&I, what we're seeing a lot now is that it's the starting point for companies, but also there's a huge block that comes after it. And it's that sense of belonging. So when you create the relative equal playing field, so whatever challenges I face, whatever challenges someone else face, or the person next to me, that we're weighted relative to what our unique challenges are for us, is for the inclusion piece. But then when we get into that company, we have to make sure that everybody feels like they're a part of it. So how important is the belonging piece, and what are the key steps for us to do today to improve that for ourselves and also for working with other people.
The belonging piece is absolutely crucial. And, I think with a lot of this, it's just basic education and showing what people can do. And a lot of people won't admit it and maybe don't know how to speak to somebody, and I stood up on a lot of stages and said, how do you speak to someone with an intellectual disability? People are like, I might just say, hey, how you doing? It's a conversation. And actually, I think we learn about what's possible by seeing. I'm a very visual person. So seeing or reading or hearing of stories where you go, God, I had no idea. So just a couple of key people. So there's a guy, Mike, who is a Special Olympics athlete, a brilliant, brilliant young man, amazing young man. He has Down syndrome. He was the first Welsh person with Down syndrome to run the London Marathon. So he did it virtually last year and the year before, and then he did it last year, and I went and met him in London and his family for lunch. Now, he has his own business, and it's coal pit Welsh cakes, the best Welsh cakes you've ever tasted in your whole entire life. And his business has just taken off, and it was actually, he was featured just before Christmas on Saturday Kitchen. They showed one of his hampers, and subsequently it just went off, in terms of popularity. So he runs his own business with support, but he's a businessman now. Yeah, and he's an amazing, amazing young man. Then we've got a chap called Niall Geit. Now, when I first met Niall, he was pretty much non-verbal. In meetings, used chatties cards, so emotions cards. And then through something was called the 2.6 challenge a few years ago, and he came up with an idea and he said, I'm going to draw 26 football stadiums and I'm going to raise £260 for Special Olympics. To date, he has drawn maybe, I think, over 150 sports stadiums which have gone all over the world, and he's raised in excess of £6,500. So going on a journey with him, and I said to him, actually, this would be a really good social enterprise. We could help you develop your business. And that's what he launched just before Christmas. I couldn't be prouder. And he's now selling mugs and pictures. And if you go to nileguide.com, you can get any stadium around the world, and he does bespoke stuff. But what he then went from was the young man I met who was non-verbal back end of early 2019 to then being interviewed on BBC TV, on radio, and he was on ESPN. And this is a completely transformed young man who used to just video call me at any opportunity, speaking to, the colleagues at Downing Street. And again, just opportunity, the right support around, and the belief that great things can happen. And I think from a sense of belonging, one of the things and one of the recommendations we made was in big businesses, if you've got a series of champions or mentors, because I think you just need to be more visible about it as well, and just getting to know individuals, who are different from your normal crew, I guess, but we're all different, aren't we? So I think just breaking down those barriers, and once you realise, I think I was at we had the anniversary games in Stirling in Scotland when I first started in 2018, and there was a whole load of corporate volunteers, and one of them said to me in the bar, not that I'm in the bar that often, always, after one of the day's events, he said, do you know what? He said, I'm ashamed to say that before I came, I didn't know how I was going to fare, because I didn't know what it was going to be like to be working with people with an intellectual disability. And he said, I've had the best day. And he said, I've had such a laugh on this golf course. And he said, I'm really ashamed that I had these perceptions. He goes, but I'm really glad, because that I now know, that life is not what I thought it was. And he went on to, him and his mates who are big rugby people, went on to then volunteer in his local club, and it changed his life. I just think we need to do more of it and just smash it. So I use the, talk a lot about the, what London 2012 did for the Paralympics. And, all of a sudden, now if a child is born without a limb, or, or a physical disability, more likely than not, you'll have seen an athlete, or you'll have seen a Paralympian, or, you've seen people on TV, and you go, actually, I know I can wear a prosthetic, and, my child can, go on and win gold medals and compete if that's what they want to do. So the more we see, the easier is it to go, but then in Special Olympics terms, the amount of parents I spoke to who were handed their child with an apology, and particularly those who've given birth to a child with visible intellectual disabilities such as Down syndrome, were like, I'm so sorry your son has, I'm so sorry. I was like, actually, there's no need to apologize. It should be congratulations, you have a beautiful daughter, you have a beautiful son. In terms of the experience that a lot of parents had, that they told me from hospital medical staff about what it was like to have a child who had Down syndrome, for example. So, and I kind of go, the more people we can get with Down syndrome and learning disability on TV and just talking about their lives, then you also, I want my utopia, if you like, would to get to. So when a mother gives birth to a child who happens to have Down syndrome, it is, congratulations, you've got a beautiful daughter. And the mother and the parents and the family have seen images of people with Down syndrome who are winning gold medals, who are doing really well in business, who are, so that there isn't a barrier there, that anything is possible. So that's where I get really evangelical about it, but I'm really passionate about that. I think the more we see, the more we hear, the more we understand, the easier it is to be inclusive and just see people as people and humans. And then that sense of belonging within businesses or community. We all want to belong somewhere, don't we? So we just need to find our tribe.
Michelle, with all the giving, all the opportunities, all this reformation, as you called it, and breaking down barriers, what's next? What do you have? You obviously have that event coming up in a couple of weeks that you touched on at the start, but what are the other things that you're really excited about?
I'm really excited about, one, the Sport Relief Commonwealth Games in the summer, and the opportunity just to see how much money we can make, what we can do differently. I'm excited about helping Comic Relief and the team here shape what is possible through the power of sport and sport for good. And so sport as a tool to make change. I'm also working with another charity called Made by Sport, who are very much about that sport for good. I'm doing a lot of analysis, and there's an event in Westminster in a couple of weeks, and I'm working with them on some fundraising models and looking at how we can do the ask differently. And so I've been working on a seed investment model idea, which we're piloting, and it's just about how we approach people differently to do good and just be positive disruptors in the field. So I'm excited to see where we can take that conversation, and that's about unlocking more corporate support. So I think it's about 0.5% of a corporate contribution into sport. So, big corporates invest a lot in rights holders. So, big football clubs or the Formula One or whatever, less than 1% of that in totality goes into sport for good, and just kind of just making people excited about that. Then one of the other things, what I'm really excited about, is going to Australia in October. I lived in Australia in my 20s, and it's a long time since I've been back to see my buddies. So I'm going over for a month, so I'm really excited about that. And then the other thing on my list of things to do is to finally get working on my book. I've wanted to write a book for so long, and I've been journaling for donkey's years. But it's whether to write as a novel or a learning book, or just selfishly just about my life and actually what people can take, in terms of resilience and all of that. That people are in desperate times, and last summer I nearly made a decision which was very close to it, which would have changed the life of all of my family and friends. And, thankfully I got the right help and, just kind of got back on track again. So, we all have, no matter what it looks like from the outside, all I would just say to people is just hold on. There's always another day, and, look at when the world starts turning a little bit more, anything is possible. So yeah, I'm excited about loads of stuff.
That's brilliant. And I think with all the chapters, some pieces you've mentioned today, we'd look forward to diving into that book. So just to wrap up, a question we ask everyone who comes on the show, and from your experience working with purpose-driven impact, high performers in business, working with the Special Olympics, high performance in sport, what does high performance mean to you, Michelle?
High performance. That's a great question. I listened to that earlier and I didn't formulate any answers. It means being the best version of yourself, and also being aware that we're all capable of a hell of a lot more than we think. So allowing yourself to be pushed out of your comfort zone, for me, leads to higher performance, which is us all just doing what we're best at more often and sharing that knowledge with others.
Michelle, thanks very much for sharing your story and really opening up to us today, and so much wisdom in that, such a story to tell. So yeah, get that book over to Ireland. We'll be buying a couple of copies of it. But thanks a lot for your time.